So, I had one question that came in, and I don't know if people are here live and you want to unmute yourself, please feel free to do that. If you want to use the chat, feel free to do that as well. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions. But somebody did ask me a question about shame, and it was interesting because even though this is the group for the betrayed partner. This person was asking from the perspective of her spouse. So, and I know we have both genders in all of our groups, but this particular case, the husband was unfaithful, and it's the betrayed wife who's a part of Inner Circle but can't ever come live. So she wanted to know if I could talk about his shame. And this was kind of the context around, again, when people ask me questions or submit questions to anybody on the team, there's usually a story around it. And I try to, dig through the story to go, okay, what's the question here? And what's happening in her marriage right now is that her husband is starting to do some of the work, but whenever he had one affair, and whenever the affair topic comes up, he's still getting very angry and defensive. But when they're not talking about the affair, then life is good. There's no issues. There's no anger. There's no defensiveness. So she was kind of giving me this backstory and was asking me why. Like, why is that? So shame is the answer in a nutshell. And this is how I explain it to people. As human beings, we all have, and if you've been following me for a while, you may have heard me use this analogy before, but as human beings, we all have what I like to think of as buttons, right? And certain buttons can get pressed at certain times or with certain people or under certain circumstances. And we can have lots of buttons, but just to narrow this down, unfaithful partners have two buttons, okay? They have a shame button and a good person button. In this case, a good guy button, okay, for this particular answer. Whenever they're talking about the affair, his shame button is getting pressed. And because there's still a lot of shame that hasn't been healed, that hasn't been worked through, that shame button is causing him to use a tool from the past, which is getting angry, getting defensive. Because what happens in a lot of relationship is anger can be used as a stopping point, right? Like somebody says something to me, and if I get angry and I'm effective at my anger tool, it can stop the other person in their tracks. And now all of a sudden, I don't have to finish the conversation because I've stopped the conversation using anger as my tool. So the shame button gets hit, right? Whenever they're not talking about the affair, it's the good guy button, right? It's the good guy button in his case. So there's no shame coming out. So he can be calm and he can have a conversation and he can talk to, in their case, they have a few children, a couple of girls and a boy. And when he's talking to the kids, it's the good guy button. It's the good guy button. But whenever he's looking at his wife, whenever they're talking about the affair, it's the shame button. So that's the answer in a nutshell. Okay, anger and defensiveness is coming out because the shame button is getting pressed. Now that has nothing to do with the betrayed partner, right? The betrayed partner, people hear me say this all the time. The betrayed partner needs to talk. Now, there's a healthy way and an unhealthy way of doing that, and that's part of the therapeutic process, right? Working through that. But the betrayed partner needs to talk. So how do you kind of deal with a betrayed partner who needs to talk, but yet every time the betrayed partner talks, the shame button is getting pressed on the unfaithful partner, and then it turns into an explosion. Okay, couple things I want to say with that. Number one, the shame button, that's a sign that the unfaithful partner needs to do more work. That's where we need to get to the right therapeutic model. Now, for those of you that know us and our team, we use root cause therapy. So, what is shame? Shame is an emotion. It's in here, it's in the nervous system. I have thoughts, I'm a horrible person, which is shame. That's what shame tells us. And that leads us to having all this shift in our nervous systems. So, but the shame itself lives in the body. So when we're working with unfaithful partners, we have to help them wake up their emotions, find the shame that's inside, help them work through that, process it, heal it. And then when they're talking about the affair, the shame isn't there. So now they can go into an empathetic state. They can go into a more calm state. They're not going to get into that angry and defensive state. So I just kind of wanted to briefly, address that since I know she can't come to the live inner circles, but um, that's the answer.
Beth, can I say something?
Sure, of course, of course.
I just, wow, that was so clarifying because I know a lot of times when I'm on calls with both betrayed partners and unfaithful partners, this whole issue around shame comes up because a lot of times it comes up when we're talking about full disclosures as well.
Yep,
And I know for betrayed partners, sometimes there can be a little bit of frustration when it's like, well, why haven't you completed that full disclosure document yet? And sometimes people might just be legitimately dragging their feet, and there's no excuse
yep,
for that. But sometimes it is because when they are actually ready to do that work, they get into that work and now putting everything on paper and trying to sort through all of that can be really triggering. And now that shame piece comes up. And I just had two conversations yesterday where I was talking to unfaithful partners that in a lot of those situations, we have to have that full disclosure document to get to the starting line. But
yeah.
please keep in mind that as you're going through that process of creating that full disclosure document, there are likely to be things that come up that maybe
Mhm.
you haven't dealt with at any point in your adult life. And you are going to need some one-on-one support. And a lot of that has to do with shame. And
Absolutely.
sometimes that doesn't come up until people really start doing that work of putting that down and going through that full disclosure process. And they need support in their own healing journey as they're trying to get all of that out. And I know sometimes that can be very frustrating for the betrayed partner because they're like, come on already. I've been waiting for a
Yep,
year or multiple years or whatever.
yep.
Why can't you just do this? And I'm not making excuses for the unfaithful partner at all. But I think what you just shared is a really, really important piece to understand.